Well, good morning and welcome. My name is Dustin Avey, and I serve as the chair of the Olathe Chamber of Commerce Business to Government Advocacy Committee. And it's my honor to moderate today's forum. The Johnson County Public Policy Council, comprised of 10 chambers of commerce serving Johnson County, to develop today's questions, focusing on business and community issues. We will start with a brief 3-minute opening statements by each candidate, followed by question and answer, where candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer the question. At the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Due to time constraints, there will be no follow-up questions, formal rebuttal time, or audience participation. Please note the candidate's speaking order has been randomly determined before the forum began and will rotate throughout the program. We want to introduce our candidates for House District number 78. House District number 78 has a northern border of 143rd Street and a southern border of 167th Street. Black Bob is the eastern border, and western border jigsaws from Merlin Road over to Apache, Lindenwood, up to 151st, and to I-35. Now I'd like to introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. First, Republican candidate Robyn Essex. Robyn has served our community as a city councilwoman, planning commissioner, and emergency response team member, Rotarian, and Sunday school teacher. She has participated in the Olathe Civic Academy, Olathe Public Schools Citizens Academy, and Eisenhower Leadership Series, in addition to mentoring middle school and high school students. Robyn is a graduate of Olathe's Mid-American Nazarene University. She and her husband, Steve, who is a middle school teacher, have 3 sons who attended Olathe and Blue Valley schools. Robyn has called Olathe home for 36 years. Our Democrat candidate, Mike Schimmel. Mike was born in Topeka, Kansas. He served in the U.S. Army as a medic and earned a bachelor's degree from Sterling College. Mike's career experience includes working as a history teacher at Milford High School in Nebraska and as a principal at La Crosse High School in Kansas. He has also worked as an associate professor of education at Emporia State University, associate superintendent in Lexington, Nebraska, and superintendent of Southern Public Schools in Wymore, Nebraska. Mike served on the City Council of La Crosse, Kansas for 3 years and as mayor for 1 year. We will begin now opening statements. As we've talked about, each candidate will have 3 minutes to present opening comments. Robyn, we'll start with you first.
All right, good morning, everyone. Wanted to first say thank you to the Chambers for hosting this event. Thanks to Natalie for organizing, and Dustin, right? Okay, thank you for keeping us in line.
Absolutely.
Just a little bit about me, and I might repeat a few things that you said. But I have lived in Kansas for 36 years now, and 30 years right here in District 78. Well, not here, but in my District 78. I'm a graduate of our Olathe hometown college, Mid-American Nazarene University, where I obtained my bachelor's degree in business administration and management. Met my husband of 32 years there, who is actually a teacher in the Blue Valley School District currently. And we fell in love with Olathe and decided to raise our family here. My oldest son, have to brag a minute, will be a physician upon graduating from KU Med School in May. My middle son's a recent computer science graduate, and my youngest son is studying health sciences and playing football at Northwest Missouri State. Sorry, I think we're going to beat Emporia this year. So, anyway, my desire to serve this community became a long-term goal of mine early on. My background is in several areas, including education. I started as a preschool teacher, kindergarten aide, and library clerk, actually at the Olathe Public Schools. I was also a corporate trainer with Sprint Corporation. It's been a little while now, but taught sales training, leadership skills, and self-improvement type courses. Worked in public service jobs. Most recently, I was tasked with solving complex immigration cases for the United States Senate for Senator Jerry Moran. And complex, I mean, during the Afghanistan withdrawal, a global pandemic, and the war in Ukraine. Those were all calls that were driven into our office. I now have the honor of serving as Olathe City Councilwoman. I love that job. I have also served on the Olathe Planning Commission and the Olathe Emergency Response Team. And as already mentioned, I'm a Rotarian, a youth mentor, Sunday school teacher, and I hope to be your next state representative. When redistricting was complete, I was recruited to run for this seat that previously belonged to my good friend, Speaker Reichman. In the last several months, I've had the opportunity to knock doors in District 78. And the common themes that I'm hearing are concerns about inflation, gas prices, food costs, increasing costs of goods and services. That by far is what I'm hearing the most. People are stretched beyond their means and they're concerned how they're gonna make ends meet. Rising property taxes has come up a lot. District 78 has quite a good amount of seniors, and they fear, even though their homes are paid off, they're gonna be taxed out of their homes. And also education issues. The concerns are freedom that families can make their decisions in the best interests of their students. I will continue to use those problem-solving skills that I've learned to tackle those cost of living issues, support policies that grow our state's economy, and put kids and parents first when it comes to their education decisions. Yeah.
Thank you, Robyn. Mike?
Yeah, my name is Mike Schimmel, and just a little bit about myself. As Dustin mentioned, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas. I'm a fourth generation Kansan. My family consists of my wife, who is here, and we've been married this year 50 years, and I'm constantly surprised that she has put up with me for that long. We have a son who is a doctor in the Navy, a Navy captain, and is at Walter Reed currently as the chief of flag medicine, which deals with the admirals and the generals. Our daughter lives in Olathe. That's why we moved here when we retired, to be closer to grandchildren, and her and her husband have a small business in this area. As Dustin mentioned, I graduated from Sterling College some time ago, and I also have a master's in historical archaeology from Emporia, and my doctorate is from University of Nebraska, along with a specialist in education. Spent 45 years in education. When we retired here, Carol said, they offered you a professorship at Emporia State, you ought to take it. So I did that. Left there, she said, they need somebody to run for the legislature. So I started doing that. I'm beginning to think that maybe shouldn't be at home too much. But I had not intended to run this year. A couple events hit me that really caused me to want to look at it again. One was a year ago on January the 6th. Our son had been the doctor at the U.S. Capitol in the 90s, and there was a gunman that went in and killed a guard, shot up some other people. Had he gone straight in, he would have gone into Bill's clinic. The day before, the guard that was shot and killed, Bill had given his physical for retirement. The January the 6th event, as a person who taught history for over 20 years, greatly affected me. As somebody who served in the service in Vietnam as a medic, it greatly affected me. The other event is the overreach of the Kansas legislature. How they handled the amendment on August the 2nd had a great effect on me. I had friends from college who died as a result of not being allowed for their own health care due to a pregnancy issue. Those caused me to want to run again and to represent District 78. Thank you very much for sponsoring this morning.
Rob, Mike, thank you very much for your opening statements. We will move now into the question and answer. Again, each candidate will have a minute and a half to respond, and the speaking order will rotate with each question. So, Mike, we're going to start with you on question number one. What are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
As a school superintendent, I had to deal with local government in a school district. As a city councilman in a rural district, in a small rural community, which happened to be a county seat, had to deal with the same thing as a mayor. My view is that there needs to be a balance. As far as tax policy, I believe the legislature should have completely eliminated the sales tax on food. I believe that there should be a elimination of the sales tax on medicine. I believe there should be an elimination of the sales tax on personal hygiene for both males and females. I believe that we should restore the ad valorem, the local ad valorem tax relief to local governments, to counties and cities, to lower, that was set up years ago, but the legislature has failed to do it. And it needs to be done to relieve property tax. The number one issue I hear from people as I go around is something that Robyn mentioned, was the property tax, or tax amount, and we need to do that. I also believe that we need to have a balance between tax. We don't need to give away taxes to multinational corporations. We need to help our businesses and our people as citizens.
Thank you, Mike. Robyn?
All right, so views on tax policy was the question, just making sure.
That's correct.
All
yes.
right, so Kansas is definitely moving in the right direction as we implement our path to eliminating the food sales tax. And a little bit of history will show that I think they attempted to pass it. It did not pass in its current form the original time. Then the governor vetoed another bill that would axe the food sales tax, so to speak. And so I'm thrilled that we actually came to an agreement and we finally are passing that. And I think the responsible way to do it is to slowly decrease as we are making sure we're meeting all of our obligations. We need to continue to address property tax relief. That is the big thing, as we both have heard at the doors. There's several ways and several avenues that we can do this for. Seniors, veterans, low-income families are being hurt the most. We can do this through property tax credit programs, which I know that the legislature dabbled in that this last session, increasing property tax exemptions, thresholds for families, and looking at adjusting the homestead property tax rebate program and prevent Kansas from losing their homes due to inflation. I'm in support of Attorney General Derek Schmidt's Retire Tax-Free plan to encourage more Kansans to retire here by exempting pensions, Social Security, and dedicated retirement distributions from state income tax. Kansas has had problems with outbound migration. Departing retirees and our state's high tax burden are a major reason for that. We need to keep public education properly funded and further maintain and improve our roads and bridges, and above all, be good stewards of our taxpayer money. Okay.
Very good. Thank you both for your response to question number one. Moving on to question number two, obviously an issue that I think both of you are passionate about is just education in general. So Robyn, I'm going to start with you on question number two. What are your views on K-12 education funding and accessibility?
All right. Well, we all know that Kansas children need to be supplied with the necessary resources to excel in our public schools. They're a future workforce, and we need to set them up for success and prepare them for their future careers. As a wife of a public school teacher, I see every day the challenges teachers are facing. They spend their own money to supply their classrooms. They're managing learning disabilities, behaviors, and trying to test individual attention to these students as well, while many para and aid positions have been eliminated or decreased. The challenges are big. We need to encourage the hiring of highly qualified teachers, counselors, and staff, including paras, and be competitive enough to retain these professionals. We don't want to lose them to other districts. We also need to appropriately fund special education, which was something they addressed this last session. And we need to invest in career-ready programs, such as Olathe's 21st Century program, dual credit options, technical school programs, and trade certification opportunities. I'd like to see more dollars dedicated to instruction and to the classroom. And another thing I like about Derek Schmidt is the safety school plan that he is talking about. I completely support. It includes doubling school safety grants, supporting more school resource officers, expanding mental health intervention, which is something we absolutely have to address at this point, and to help and support more struggling kids in more communities.
Thank you, Robyn. Mike?
Yeah. I've spent my entire life in education as a professional. I've served as a teacher for over half of that. I've served as a school administrator and as a university professor. I believe that first and foremost, we need to support our teachers. One of the reasons I'm running is that I believe that one of the greatest problems in education right now is the lack of respect for teachers and support for what they're doing. A few years ago, I did a research study as a university professor, and we looked at why teachers were leaving within the first 3 years. The number one reason given to us was that lack of respect. That was when the state took away due process statewide for teachers. Left it up to local governments. Some believe that that's the way it should be done. I believe that, number one, we can fully fund special ed. As somebody who's had to deal with that totally unfunded mandate, not totally unfunded, but it takes away local resources. That's a mandate that you have to do, and so you have to cut other programs in order to do that. State funding, full state funding of special ed is the best thing that you can do right now.
Thank you both for your responses. Moving on to question number 3. Obviously, there's been a lot of news recently in Johnson County and the state related to some economic development initiatives and announcements. So along those lines, what types of economic development policies do you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas? Mike, we'll start with you on this one.
Sure. As an educator, obviously, I believe that education is the biggest economic development for our state. And if you support education, that brings businesses in. I support the governor's leadership in this area of not only education, but also in economic development. The fact that she brought back the state rating for bonds in this state is a tremendous benefit for business. That losing that greatly hurt the state in this way. But we can support business locally and statewide by supporting our governor.
Mike, Robyn?
All right, well, economic development, this is something that I've been looking at quite a bit lately, been researching what other states are doing. Businesses are facing extraordinary circumstances post-pandemic, including soaring inflation, a lack of qualified workers, and supply chain issues. We need to explore a range of policy options that will address these things. First and foremost, always the answer is access to education. Career-focused programs starting in high school and beyond to increase the number of our skilled workers out there. Workforce development. We need to provide opportunities for on-the-job training and apprenticeships, as well as continuous learning options for employees. We need to invest in transportation infrastructure, obviously to get those goods and services where they need to go, but also to ensure safe and short commutes for people going back and forth to work. Investing in reliable broadband across the state, which has been a problem in our rural areas and still a problem in 3rd District, I'm hearing. Explore programs like Indiana's Elevate Ventures program. This was interesting. It is specifically for entrepreneurs, and it provides a place for entrepreneurs to get advisory and technical assistance, including obtaining information on federal grants and potential investor opportunities. Just a place to have it all together in one place for them. I'll also push to review, identify, and eliminate ineffective and job-killing regulations and unnecessary licensing requirements. We also need to measure the success of our previous incentive programs and consider those factors that worked and didn't work, and with future policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Robyn. Mike? Oh, sorry, next question.
Oh,
Unless you want to answer that one again.
Maybe I can do it better.
Yeah. So question number 4, again, along the lines of economic development, workforce is a big component of that. So Robyn, we'll start with you on this particular question. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Okay. Well, we've already talked about several tenets of a successful workforce, but again, providing access is key to training and education programs with a focus on technical and community colleges, as they provide cost-effective options for students to acquire industry-recognized education and certifications. Education's getting expensive, harder and harder for people to attend. So these focuses on these cost-effective options will be helpful. We must also partner with the Board of Regents and with public and private colleges to incentivize students to pursue high-demand jobs in fields such as education, healthcare, manufacturing, engineering, and criminal justice. The pandemic just changed our job landscape, and I think forever. Jobs just shifted, from office buildings to working from home. Many changed career paths or quit working altogether. Finding quality applicants has become a struggle. Employers are starting to look at job openings differently by investing in their current employees and promoting from within instead of always looking outside. Employee development is key to retaining the current workforce and even attracting new workers.
Thank you, Robyn. Mike?
Once again, workforce is dependent upon education, both public and private, technical and business-oriented jobs. The pandemic did have an effect. One of the things that I did in my last superintendency was that we created a consortium of 24 schools that brought in broadband to those schools. Broadband is going to help business because, as Robyn mentioned, many people are working at home. As I go around to houses, you can go to the day and people are there because they're working. And you can talk to them and hear what their concerns are and what their needs and what their wants are. I believe that workforce development is based upon education. And in working with the various labor unions which have supported me, one of the ones that intrigued me most was the electrical unions, who have their own apprentice system and have helped people get into that in large numbers in a needed area. We need to support that both locally and statewide. Thank you.
Thank you both for your response to question number 4. Moving on, and maybe shifting back to an education question, really more post-secondary question. What are your views on the state's role with respect to ensuring access and affordability of post-secondary education? Mike, we'll start with you.
Sure. When I went to Emporia State as a professor, it was sort of a full circle in my life. I was fortunate because I had retired as an educator and we had some sources of income. I had colleagues there who had not received a pay raise in over 5 years. That was a state school. That was a state responsibility. The cutting in funding, how does that affect higher education? It affects it by having to put it back on the tuition of students. When I went to Sterling College, my entire 4 years, the cost of what it cost me was less than our daughter's 1 semester at Drake University, another private school. We need to support education. I support Lynn Rogers' proposal, which he sort of borrowed from the state of Connecticut, where there's a partnership between business and the educational institutions to help students pay for that. And I, maybe not popularly, but I support the debt reduction that the president proposed. That is good investment. That is investment in the future. At my last superintendency, when I interviewed, they said, what do you want in your students in 5 years? I said, I want them to be productive students because I'm retiring and they have to pay for it. That is important for all of us. That is what we need in our state.
Mike, Robyn?
Yeah, I agree with that. Education, the cost is not coming down anytime soon. And there's more answers to helping that and looking into outside of just funding, but maybe to find out a way to curb some of those costs. What I feel like would make us successful with our state's role as post-secondary education assistance is, first of all, again, reliable broadband. It helps expand access to online classes for students, ensuring that we have a succinct place where students can go to find information regarding financial aid and availability and grant opportunities in our state. Maintain and improve these sites. I know the Kansas Board of Regents has an excellent webpage, making sure that those resources are available because so many scholarship opportunities go unclaimed. So much money out there that people just don't know about. And if we can direct them at least to where to go and how they can qualify and help them in applying for those, that would be super helpful too. We should continue to invest in programs such as the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act and the Teacher's Service Scholarships that encourage students to go into much needed fields such as information technology, healthcare, education, and agriculture, among others. This is available to those that attend our Kansas community colleges and Kansas technical colleges. Finally, we need to partner with public and private organizations to fund more scholarships and fund more grants for our students. Thank you.
Thank you both for your answers to question number 5. Moving on to question number 6. Certainly the last 2 years have been somewhat unprecedented as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic, and obviously as we move past that and look back, it does provide some perspective on what we can learn from that experience. Robyn, I'm going to start with you on this particular question. What do you believe are the takeaways for state lawmakers should be from the COVID-19 pandemic experience?
All right, and what an experience it was. Local governments know their communities best. Elected officials should make prudent decisions based on information from the experts, along with community factors and economic implications. Government should not determine who is considered essential and who is not. Business owners should be able to make decisions based on what's best for them. Hospitals should be afforded the flexibility to best meet the needs of their patients, and school boards should determine policies that are best for their respective districts. So local control.
Thank you, Mike.
I think the biggest takeaway from COVID was the need for public health and the support of public health in our country and in our state and in our communities. One of the grants that we wrote in my last superintendency was a public health grant, which looked at the total thing. We brought into 5 different school districts social workers to work within the community to help the students. The number one thing that I found, in the districts that I were in were basically at-risk districts. And that's the reason I was hired in those districts, to try to find needs and to identify the needs and to find solutions to them. I believe that when you look at public health, one of the areas of greatest need that I hear from people time and time again as I go door to door is mental health. I think that would help if we support areas of where local governments can increase help in that area of mental health. The pandemic had a tremendous effect on people's well-being, both mentally and physically. And we need to support that and look to the future to provide so that we do not go back there. When I was teaching students that were going into school administration and we were talking about safety, the number one thing I would tell them that if you err on the part of safety. Thank you.
Thank you both. Moving on to question number 7, and again, somewhat healthcare related. And Mike, we'll start with you on this question. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
I'm absolutely for Medicaid expansion. I believe it is essential. I believe, as I said, that I worked in districts where they were at risk. And for my parents and my communities, they were working 2 or 3 jobs, but yet they couldn't afford the physical health insurance that was needed. Just in Johnson County, we know that we would expand, if we would expand Medicaid, you would increase those uninsured to gain insurance by almost 8,000 people. You'd be talking about bringing into the community $59+ million a year in healthcare support. This is needed. It's a community issue. These are people that are working jobs, and we need to support them, because I agree with Paul Wellstone when he said, we all do better when we all do better. We're in a community together. We don't need to separate people by the haves and have-nots. We need to support each other. And public health is a right. It's not a gift. It is a right.
All right. Well, Medicaid expansion is the hot topic in Kansas, continues to be year after year. I will share, we all love the idea of lowering healthcare costs and allowing more people to be cared for and covered under insurance. But Medicaid in its current form has lots of issues that need to be addressed before we can start talking about expansion. During my time in the US Senate, the majority of my casework and calls came from people who had issues with government-run entities. They weren't getting the services they were promised. Wait lists were long, customer service was terrible, they couldn't get through to anyone. I see that as a problem, and expanding that could just exacerbate the problems that we're currently facing. Let me name a few of those. The waiting lists are super long just to get into the program. I have a dear friend of mine who shares a story about his brother who recently found out he had a brain tumor and was applying to be a part of Medicaid. And he actually passed away while waiting to still be accepted into the program. And this is just because many doctors don't accept Medicaid patients because the reimbursements are so low. Current beneficiaries also have issues once they're in seeing a doctor in a timely manner. Best treatment options, I have heard from constituents, are being denied due to cost. And federal funding for these programs, they shift and healthcare costs are rising. But there's no way to know how it will impact our budget. Coverage does not equal care. We need to go back to the drawing board on this. And I will add, we do need to fund telemedicine at the current levels that make this a permanent option for patients. Thanks.
Thank you both for those responses. Last question number 8. Decision-making is divided among the state legislature and local governments, including school boards. On issues such as taxation, economic development, and education has been a matter of such debate between different levels of government. What are your views on this issue? And Robyn, we'll have you start with this one.
All right, well, local control, I'm a fan. State and local governments, they have separate responsibilities, separate situations that they're dealing with. The state should have a mostly hands-off philosophy when it comes to local policy. As an incumbent Olathe City Councilwoman, I understand local government needs to retain the ability to make their own fiscal decisions and make decisions that are best for their communities. They know them the best. Beyond fiscal policy, though, local elected officials know best and should largely be making those decisions.
I taught government for a lot of years, and it is essential that the state support the local entities that they created. It is essential that local government officials do meet the local needs. The state needs to support that. What I found in this state is that by and large, people preach that at the state level, unless there's something being done locally that they disagree with. And then there's overreach. The local governments are created because they are closer to the people, closest to the people. They were created to meet those needs, and we need to support that both from the state and the federal level. And I really appreciate when that is done. As a former local official, as a former school official, I didn't like mandates being passed down, particularly if they're unfunded, because then it puts it back on local people to do things that maybe they would do differently. So we need to maintain that relationship where it's balanced.
Thank you both for your answers to all those questions. We're really going to move into closing statements. Again, candidates will be given 2 minutes each to present closing statements. Please be sure to highlight what most distinguishes you from your opponent. Mike, we'll start with you on this question.
Thank you. As I said, my background's in education. I believe in education. I believe that that is the future of our country. I believe that we support our students. I believe that we support our schools and we support our local governments. I got into this race because I believe in that the state legislature has overreached. That was the effect of the August 2nd amendment. 68% of District 78 said no. I will support that. Those issues will keep coming back from the legislature. Someone once said that bad ideas in the Kansas legislature never die, they only get worse. And I believe that we need to support what the public said in District 78, that no, women should have the right to choose. Different people voted no for different reasons. Some voted no because the legislature refused to put in any exceptions to the ban on abortion. I believe that we need to go against the overreach of the legislature. When I studied history, one of my favorite writers was Alex de Tocqueville, and he made a statement called "the tyranny of the majority." His fighting back against that is one of the reasons I'm running to represent and working to earn the votes of the voters of District 78. Thank you for sponsoring this. Natalie, thank you for setting it up. And Dustin, thank you for your fairness.
All right, well, I'd also like to close with another thank you to the Chamber for hosting this, and it's been wonderful to be able to share our vision for this state. I want to first of all thank you for your military service. America thanks you, we thank you. Appreciate that. I've lived in Olathe for 36 years now. I know Olathians. I know District 78. Like my opponent, I have a family of teachers. Unlike my opponent, we've taught in Johnson County schools, not in rural schools. I'm deeply rooted in this community and I'm very familiar with the unique experiences of raising a family here, working here, and serving here in Johnson County. The other thing that distinguishes me from my opponent is my experience and deep familiarity with all levels of government. I've had the opportunity to work locally as a planning commissioner and city councilwoman in a large municipality. At the state level through policymaking, lobbying, and advocacy, and at the federal level providing constituent services, advising on policy, and doing casework while working in the United States Senate. I understand these processes and I know how to bring people together to get things done. I have also so enjoyed the conversations that I've had on the front porch and driveways of people in District 78. They're well educated on the issues and they're passionate about their beliefs. They care about what's happening in our state. I am committed to finding common sense solutions to the issues we are all facing as inflation sets in, taxes are rising, and families are just struggling to make ends meet. I hear you and I'm with you. I will provide independent solutions and be your independent voice. I will listen more and talk less. Imagine a politician doing that, right? I am ready to put aside hyper-partisanship and work with both parties to lower inflation, improve our economy, reduce the cost of healthcare, and keep our schools fully funded. Please visit my website. It's at robynforkansas.com or my Facebook page, Robyn Essex for Kansas, to learn more about me. I hope to earn your vote on November 8th. Thanks so much.
Mike, Robyn, thank you very much for participating. That does conclude our forum for House District number 78. On behalf of the Olathe Chamber of Commerce, thank you to everyone for taking advantage of this important opportunity to learn about the candidates. For more information about the candidates, videos of these and other candidate forums, and advanced voting details, please visit www.votejoco.com. And please share this voter resource with your colleagues, family, and friends. With that, thank you again for attending, and we are adjourned.